Now this is a free dog, best dog in the world. Sometimes you can do a lot without much money. Now I have learned most of my art skills, whichever ones I now have, on smooth newsprint paper. This costs £5, you get 100 sheets. I usually do like 3 or 4 figures or portraits per page, and then I'll use like a pastel pencil. This costs £2, but it does last a while. So then the other type of sketching I do is with a mechanical pencil, and I use 2B leads. I've got a 0.7 or a 0.5, it doesn't really matter which, and I just use any old sketchbook basically. It doesn't have to be fancy, sometimes just printer paper. So most of the fundamental skills of art, drawing and painting, you can learn with some simple paper and some simple pencils. And Loish, who's an artist that I really love, and I love her sketches in her sketchbook, it's just with a simple, any old mechanical pencil and some 2B leads. They're not expensive, right? So sometimes, rather than sketching and drawing, you want to do some value studies, which is a little slightly different, and then the pencils aren't the optimal tool for that. You can still do them with these, but they're not the optimal tool, because sometimes you want to be able to just create a shape of flat value, or directly choose what the value is and create a shape in that value. So these are pro markers, but you can now get Ohuhu ones, which are less expensive. So now I just get these. And by the way, none of this stuff is sponsored. This is all just stuff I bought myself, right? So value studies, you can also do really effectively digitally. And the advantage with digital is that you can just keep sketching and doing value studies to your heart's content. Maybe if you've got an iPad, you can get an iPad. The initial outlay is pricey, but you can combine that with software like Procreate, which isn't too expensive, and then you can do sketching and value studies to your heart's content. So the advantage of using something like digital or marker pens for learning principles about values and also about color is that you can directly choose the value. Like with the marker pen here, I can say, I want this value, this level of gray. Whereas with watercolor, you're kind of fighting at first, right? Now I'm friends with the water, but at first I'm like fighting with this water, trying to get the pigment to ratio level right, the brush technique, the splotchiness. It's such a disaster every time. It's still often a disaster. And it is a lot more accessible to do those value studies and even start to get into color, I think, with something like markers or with something like Procreate, say. Let's say you don't want to get an iPad, or you don't have an iPad. You can use software on your computer like Clip Studio Paint, and I think Clip Studio Paint seems to me quite powerful, but then again, I'm not a professional digital artist. I am very lucky because I got this display tablet from Huion for free. So that's kind of lucky, right? And this means that I can draw, a bit like the iPad, I can draw on the screen and the picture's there on the tablet as I draw. So it's kind of like I'm drawing on paper almost. However, a lot of professional artists prefer a pen tablet where the tablet that you're drawing on doesn't have a screen and you're looking at the computer screen, so like you're drawing on the tablet here and it's appearing on the screen in front of you. There's a lot of advantages to that in terms of, your posture's better because you're looking here, not hunched over your drawing. And also your hand's not in the way. So you're drawing down here, but the image is up here. People do beautiful paintings and drawings this way. A lot of people prefer it. You can get used to it, and the tablets are way cheaper. So you can totally go really far with that. I think that one of the disadvantages on the iPad is the smaller size. You can get this thing that you set the iPad into so that you can kind of move your arm around it more, in a bigger way, which to me was a big thing for drawing. One of the reasons I love to draw on my A3 newsprint paper is to be able to move the pencil around. So it's probably, I think, better to get, let's say you have a budget for your tablet, better to get a slightly larger pen display without the screen than a smaller thing with the screen, right? Better to have more real estate to move your arm around. Okay, but so let's say you get a pen display that might be, you know, a few $100 plus the software, which might be like $50 or so, or you get the Apple Pencil, which might be, again, this is $100 in it, but then the iPad is more expensive. But with those tools, you can then learn your values, do your value studies, and learn about color as well. Okay, so in terms of what always happens to me, right, is I see beautiful artwork, and I have this longing, I want to make stuff like that. That's so great. I feel this all the time. And then I go, maybe I just buy the same materials as that person, and then I'll be able to do it. As if it's the materials that makes this stuff great. And I buy the materials, and I put them in a drawer, and I don't use them. So it's useful to remember that what makes drawings and paintings work is the simplification of the forms and the values, the design choices around the shapes and the edges and things like that, and then of course the creativity and vision of the artist. But if, you know, while you're learning the fundamental skills, which are absolutely necessary, I wouldn't worry about chasing the effects of different materials. I would worry about doing your value studies, even if it's just with marker pens or whatever, simple tools in Procreate or something, or just a pencil and paper, lots and lots of sketching, and then bring up your skill level that way. So you can make amazing stuff and learn a lot and go really far without, you know, selling your kidneys or whatever, right? But then you want to get into, let's say you want to get into watercolor, you may need to sell something, right? So now let's talk about painting. Let's say you want to get into painting. I have a brush like this. I think it cost about £15. It's a synthetic brush, and a lot of like pro artists will use synthetic brushes like these. And there's not many people who say the brush makes all the difference. So if the brush is super duper low quality and cheap, then it might affect you, but you don't have to spend too much to get somewhere, and you're probably going to need maybe 3 brushes. So a bigger one, a medium one, like a sort of size 12 one, round one like this if it's watercolor, and then a small one. So then the big problem with watercolor is the paper. So I have tried the less expensive sketchbooks and stuff that's not even that cheap, right? And it's not that the water just behaves completely differently on the paper, such that the practice you do on it is almost a waste of time, because it's going to be so different when you then start using proper watercolor paper like Arches, and this stuff is so expensive. This is like 40 or 50 pounds for 20 sheets. And so let's say you're learning and you kind of smash through 20 sheets in a month, and then you have to fork out another 40 or 50 pounds or something. Admittedly, this is very large and you don't have to paint so large, right? This is a perfect sketchbook from Etcher, and it's like 40 or 50 pounds or something. The paper is really, really good. I got this because rather than having separate sheets everywhere, I wanted to do a series of practice sketches and be able to just keep them in one place. And I'm lucky because this is my job now, and I can kind of justify that expense, but it's not necessary. And there are now really good brands, cheaper than Arches, but they still have, like, the paper needs to have like sizing, which I barely understand what that is, but it's really important, and stuff like that to make it work with watercolor. And you don't have to spend quite as much as, like, these are quite expensive. You can get it for less, but it's just not worth getting the stuff that's even cheaper than that. So if you're particularly interested in watercolor, I'll put like the specs of the paper that you want below, and then you can choose it yourself. So let's now talk about stuff to draw. Some of the best stuff to draw is from your life, from the world around you, which is hopefully free to look at, right? So I've drawn my kettle and the fruit in the bowl and my dog and, my wife so many times because they're just there. If you can get to in-person life drawing sessions, they're great. They're really, really fun. And it is valuable to have the actual 3D form in front of you. If you can't get to a life drawing session at all, that's totally fine. But then, take that time to draw the dog or the cat or, the bowl of fruit. Just draw forms you know, in person where you can see the full 3D form. That really is valuable, but you don't have to exclusively do that. And you can get so good by drawing from photographs. That's absolutely fine. Do you need to pay for good reference photos? It used to be that you could go to Google Image Search or Pinterest and, you know, I want to draw some people cycling along the road, and an image comes up and I can sketch it. Now it's not even worth bothering, because half of them are AI, and AI is now, you know, so good it's hard to tell the difference. And you might go, well, if you can't tell the difference, what's the problem? You can just use the AI image as a reference, right? But there is a problem. So, you know, you look for the cyclist going along the road, and then it's only after a while you realize, wait, if this, you know, thinking about the perspective and the horizon line, etc., this person in the distance, and you go lining them up with the car over there, you go, oh, that person's legs are 8 feet long. It's just, and also why? Sorry, why would you practice from this slightly wonky, weird thing when there's so many? There was never a shortage of photos. There was never a shortage of paintings. All right. So anyway, something like Pexels, I think, is pretty good. You can go on our site. It's all real references. You can go on Pexels and stuff like that. All right. There's also other providers of references like Draw Brighton. There's Bodies in Motion. There's Graphic Studio, stuff like that. And you can pay people for their really professional quality references. And that's good because, you know, that helps life models and that helps the sort of art ecosystem. But if you don't have the money to do that, you can also find a lot of this stuff for free. So then there's art books, and I really like buying art books. It's a bit of a problem, actually. Like, we don't have the space, and each one, they're not super cheap, right? They're like 20 to 25 pounds each. This one I could only find on eBay. I really like Pascal Campion. You can see all the pictures online, but I wanted a book. And when my wife asked me, how much did you pay for it? I'm like, oh, there's a squirrel over there. I cannot bring myself to tell her how much I paid for that book. So you don't need any art books. You can go to website. Let's say you want to like see the art behind different movies. A lot of that's available online. I've seen there's a couple of websites like there's one called Character Design References, I think, and stuff like that. So different websites that will provide you with a lot of these pictures, and obviously you can go to the Instagrams of the artists who are behind these movies, which is something I like to do as well. I've really enjoyed Nathan Falk's portrait book. I thought that was worth it. Steve Houston's figure book, and you know, stuff like that. I'll only buy another one if I have genuinely, you know, read and done studies from, or done some of the exercises from the other ones that I've got. So that just kind of helps to prevent that like retail therapy. I'm feeling a bit stressed, so I'm going to buy some book to make me feel better type of thing. And I get a lot from books. It's like with anything, if I actually do some practice with them. Now, other books where it's just like you can just sort of flip through and enjoy the books, as long as I am genuinely reading them, which I do, then I think it's okay. All right, so it was £100. It was £100. I don't know. She's going to see that now. Anyway, so now let's talk about teaching, courses, lessons, how to learn all of this stuff. I'm going to be a little biased here because I teach this stuff for a living. I think it's super valuable what I do. But I'm just genuinely going to tell you what I think about all of this. So there's lots of different formats for learning. One is books, and I've got a lot from books. One is tutorials on YouTube. They're free, and you know what? People like me on YouTube, we spend a lot of time thinking about how to transmit information really clearly, so you can really get the idea. But there's a gap between a tutorial and a course, and the gap is the gap between knowledge and skill. In a course, you'll have the lesson, which will be about the idea, but then you need a really carefully designed sequence of exercises so that you really get that idea. That is not my experience of learning to draw. What I experienced was I'd go and grab a course. It was it was often too advanced for me, and I didn't realize that. It's like, paint like this amazing artist. Oh, I want to paint like this amazing artist. I try and do it. Way too difficult. I'd fail, and then I blame myself. All right. Now, those courses are really good, and I've gone back to them after learning more fundamental stuff, and now they're opened up to me, and I can get a lot from them. But if you've bought a course or something and you didn't get anything out of it, it might not be a bad course. It might just be that you need to keep working on more fundamental stuff and then come back to it later, and it will all make sense and it will really elevate your skills. At least that's something I've experienced a lot. So the ideal scenario, I think, is that you have a sequence of courses that are, starting from where you are, and then each lesson is very simple and concise, and then it, not droning on and on for ages, but just gives you the idea, and then do the exercises to build the skill, and then get feedback, so that, it's just so important to notice these little things that you got wrong or whatever, and then move on to the next idea. And then the lessons, you're working through these lessons, and they're doable. They're not easy, they're very challenging. There's a lot of failure along the way, but they're doable, and you complete this course, and then you're ready for the next one. And this is basically why I designed the study group that we have, our membership, the way it is. It's a sequence of courses starting from the most foundational stuff and building on it all the way up to advanced stuff. All the lessons in each one build on each other. There's exercises with each one, and you can get one-to-one feedback. And then we made it super affordable, given how much stuff you get in there, including feedback and community and code drawing sessions with me and all kinds of stuff like that. The sort of, I think it's a really, really good value deal. So that's the sales pitch over. I'm just genuinely, that is why we designed it that way. But you can also, we have a free course as well, a mini course called Fresh Eyes, and it covers some of the most important stuff in figure drawing, I think. And you can go really far, and you'll have that experience of having a few simple ideas, but then having a sequence of exercises along the way to build the actual skill of it. You can also create your own sort of learning experience with free online tutorials, like from YouTube and stuff. And sometimes YouTube tutorials don't have exercises, but you can make your own. The only way to get anything from any tutorial or any course is to do the work of the practice. And the first times that you do it, it's not going to make any sense. You're going to fail at it. But as you keep trying to do the exercises, you will get better. So if it's a book or a course or whatever it is, it's a waste if you don't try and do any practice. But if you do some practice, it is incredibly valuable and powerful. Getting feedback is super important. I definitely would have been spinning my wheels a lot without Jared Cullum, who gives me a lot of feedback. Lane Brown has given me really useful feedback as well, and that's why we try and offer feedback in our membership. Having more money can make things a bit more efficient, but still it's going to take a lot of practice and work to develop the skills. And so if you don't have a huge budget, you're not at a massive disadvantage relative to everybody else. Ultimately, what's really needed is some paper and a pencil. And then beyond that, there are things that can make it quicker or easier, but it's really challenging and time consuming for everyone. And I do think everyone now, especially with all the free resources online and stuff, can go really, really far without having to spend too much. So one thing I want to mention is that I don't put YouTube ads on these videos. So, free videos with ads is kind of free, but not exactly free, because you've got to go through the ad, whereas we don't put them on. So I hope that makes them more enjoyable. Also, I get a lot of emails with people offering to pay me to promote their stuff, sponsorships, and I have never done one of those. So again, I hope that makes it enjoyable. This channel and everything is paid for by our study group members. So thank you to you if you're a study group member. I'm really proud of what we can offer in our study group. I think it's really, really affordable, and you get so much for it when you join up. So check out the link below if you want to check it out. Speaking of free tutorials, I've got another one from our channel up here on the screen. So check it out, and I'll see you over there.